Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Adam White, and it is time for another government affairs update for the Alaska Airmen's Association. So we are starting just a little bit early as I look at my watch, but we're going to give folks a little bit of a time to get joined up here before we continue on talking about tonight's conversation and things that I wanted to give you an update for. So while we're waiting on everybody, I'm looking out the hangar window over here. I've been checking the weather radar, and we've got some pretty big thunderstorms moving in here into the vicinity. So it may cause a little bit of a problem. If the thunderstorm hits, it's going to get really, really loud here inside the hangar. So if that does happen, I'm liable to wrap things up pretty quick and sign off, because you don't want to hear the rain and everything else hitting the hangar roof. There's actually some reports of some hail mixed in with some of these thunderstorms that are moving their way here towards Nenana, which some people say hail in Alaska. Yes, we do get hail. Now, it's not the big golf ball size, softball size like they get down Oklahoma, Texas, and other parts of the lower 48, but we do get hail. So there has been some hail reported in these storms that are moving in, so makes me very grateful and thankful to have a hangar to keep the airplanes in when we do have reports of hail. So we are past the 6 o'clock mark, so I want to go ahead and get started here tonight. A few things I wanted to talk about, but first, yes, I am continuing the tradition of wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I get a lot of comments from folks encouraging me to keep doing that, kind of keep it lively and fun. And so I guess some guys won't admit to this, but my wife picked this shirt out for me. So thanks to Lindy for picking that out. And I say that not because I want to blame her for the shirt, but because she's much better at this stuff than I am. Guys, I think we can all admit that our wives do a better job of that than we do. So continuing on with the Hawaiian shirt theme, as we started back a few months ago with all the COVID-19 discussions that we were having, and it was kind of gloomy as winter was coming to an end and spring was late in starting. And so anyway, it was a way to kind of brighten things up. And so I'm going to keep the tradition going. So look for some new Hawaiian shirts every month as I do this. I'm not sure I'm going to be wearing them beyond this. We'll see. I don't know, maybe that'll become a trademark or something, who knows. But speaking of the pandemic and flying and all those things, that's a couple of the topics I want to talk about tonight. Primarily, the health mandates for the state of Alaska, and what does that mean for us flying around? Things have been eased up significantly. If you're entering into the state, now there's an option to not have to have a 14-day quarantine, but if you submit to a test, and if it comes back negative, that can drastically reduce your amount of time to stay self-isolated. And so I know a lot of folks are planning summer trips to Alaska, and it's still difficult to figure out if that's going to work for them or not. But actually, I've been talking to a group of guys down in the lower 48 that are trying to make a trip of a lifetime. Some of them have been up here before, but they've reached out to the Airmen's Association and actually become members because of us being able to help them with that. So shameless plug for your membership. I appreciate all of you keeping your membership current, because it allows us to keep doing what we're doing to advocate for general aviation. So there are some loosening up of some of those restrictions. We can travel up and down the highway system and the marine highway system. Those communities have been opened up. Now, a lot of the off-highway and remote communities in the state still have some mandates and I guess rules, for the lack of a better term, as to what you need to do when you enter into that community, whether or not they even allow you into that community. You have to be essential services to be able to get in and out of a lot of villages still, as we're still working through this pandemic. So one of the things that I have asked for through the Governor's Aviation Advisory Board is for the state to have a one-stop shop, one place that we can go and look at each community's mandates and to make sure that we are actually in compliance. Because the last thing we want to do is come in someplace where we're not supposed to be. We don't want to give aviation, especially general aviation, a bad rap. And so I've asked that the state work on that. They have agreed that that's a good idea, and they're going to do better at that, and they have gotten better at that. But they're saying it's difficult, and I totally understand and agree that yes, it is difficult to know what all of those are, but we need to go to one place, just like we do when we get a pre-flight weather briefing. There's lots of places to get our information, but there is one place that we know that if we call, Flight Service will give us all the data that we need, right? So that's what I'm asking for the state of Alaska. They're working on that. So look to see when that shows up on the state's website. And you can just do a search engine for Alaska health mandates and you'll find the state's page there. So that's some good news. They're working on finding to get all of that in one spot for us. So that'll be very, very helpful. The other thing that we've been working on, you know I talked a while back about the extensions that the FAA was able to give for a lot of the things that were going to expire, whether it was medicals, biannual flight reviews, all those types of things. And we are now coming very close. We are in the last month of those extensions, and some things have not gotten better yet. Some things have not improved to the point where we feel like, as the Airmen's Association and as some of the other national alphabet groups, as we call them, AOPA, EAA, NBAA, all those groups, are asking the FAA to extend those exemptions and extensions. So to put an extension on top of an extension, and those mechanics of us out there know that that's never a good thing to start stacking extensions when you're working on stuff, but that's what we're going to have to do. The FAA says that they're looking into that. There is no answer to that request right now. I'm hoping that we can hear something before the end of the month, because folks are still saying they're having trouble doing flight reviews and getting their medicals renewed and that sort of thing. So check rides are starting to happen. A good friend of mine has been trying for a week now to get his check ride going, but it's not because of COVID-19. It's because of mechanical issues, and then today it was because of weather. And now he goes back to shift work at a mine here in the state, and so he's going to have to push that check ride off for a few weeks now. So a lot of these things are being affected, and the FAA is aware of it. They are listening to what folks like the Alaska Airmen's is requesting of them to do, and they promise us that they will have us an answer. Don't know what that will be just yet, but we're working on it. So that's the answer for now, I guess. So looking at my list, some other things I've mentioned to us in the past, the notion that private airstrips, if you have a private airstrip and you are not sure if it's current as far as the information that the FAA has in its database, you need to confirm that. The reason why is because there is a very long list of airports that the FAA says they haven't heard from the owners of, and they are going to take those airports while not take them off the records, but take them out of the supplement, take them off of the charts. So you need to update your information with the FAA, and if you don't know how to do that, reach out to me via private message or email or phone. The Alaska Airmen's website has all of my contact information, and you can do that as well through your social media. But there's a pretty easy address that you can go to and look up your airport information and be able to update it there. And even if you just log in to that website as the owner of the airport, that reestablishes communication with the FAA, and so that's good enough. But do review it and make sure that it doesn't need to be updated with information. But that website, so folks can go in and log in to update their information if they do have a private airport, is ADIP, that's Alpha Delta India Papa .faa.gov, adip.faa.gov, and probably would have to set up an account to be able to get in there if you haven't done that already, and then you can go in and update that information. So please do that. Some other things that I wanted to talk about briefly. I submitted the comment letter for the Clear Air Force Station Long-Range Discriminating Radar Temporary Flight Restriction Environmental Assessment. It's a long title. There's a lot of things going on. I showed you that thick stack of papers that I was reviewing and going through. I submitted a comment letter on behalf of our membership. That letter is on our website. If you go to alaskaairmen.org and click on the Advocacy tab, you'll be able to see that letter that I wrote on behalf of our membership, showing some of our concerns and explaining and outlining some things that I felt like they didn't get right, and that I asked them to go back and reevaluate. A couple of the things that I mentioned in that letter, I'll just pull it up right quick to be able to refresh my memory to make sure that I remember what I wrote here. One of the things that has come to light is that it's hard for the FAA to know what kind of VFR traffic we have in the vicinity of that radar, because air traffic control, whether it's Anchorage Center or whether it's Fairbanks Approach, the radar coverage for air traffic control is not low enough to be able to see the majority of the VFR traffic. They have a very good idea what's happening at the higher altitudes with the IFR infrastructure, but it's hard to know what's happening down low where we all fly, right? And they don't have a way of getting hard, fast, honest to goodness, real life numbers for the VFR traffic that flies out of Windy Pass or into Windy Pass in that vicinity. And so some of the assumptions that they made, I feel are inaccurate. And I pointed some of those out. One of which is fuel consumption. If we're going to have to reroute around this airspace, which will be temporary, it'll be a TFR initially, but then it will go into a permanent rulemaking process to be an expanded restricted area with multiple segments, and certain times that this part will be on, other times that part will be on. And so there will be some increased cost for us to fly around that airspace. And so they only evaluated fuel cost. And those of us who own and operate airplanes know that sometimes the fuel that we burn is the cheapest part of the flight. And so to say that it's a negligible increase in cost because there's a negligible increase in fuel consumption to go around that airspace, I think is disingenuous. I think it's a little naive because there's more to operating an airplane when it comes to cost than just the fuel that we burn. So that was one of the other issues I brought up. Probably the biggest issue that I brought up in that letter was the fact that certain parts of that airspace, once it becomes completely operational, now this is not going to be the case during the testing program, which is going to probably start in October. At least that's the timeline right now. It's liable to shift again. But the plan is in October, they're going to turn on a temporary flight restriction because they're going to be testing that radar to see what they need to do to get it operational. That testing could take up to a year, probably a little longer, just because we know how those projects really work out in the real world. But when that airspace then goes to a permanent status, there's a couple of segments that we've asked that we have a higher floor to that segment so we can get in underneath, to be able to get into the clear airport, to be able to get in and out of Windy Pass, and still have the Parks Highway as a very good visual reference point to make sure that we're clear of that airspace. They've listened. They've come up with some possible solutions, but it has come to my attention through several of these meetings that I've attended and that I have some very serious concerns. And so what could happen is that when this radar becomes operational, if they have these two segments that are pretty low, that they will only turn on to verify and to calibrate a couple times during the week until they need to go operational. Until there's an operational need is the word that's been used, meaning if there's a real world threat and they need to turn that radar on and they need to get very focused on a specific part of the sky that is inside of that airspace, they say that there is no opportunity to warn or notify the flying public. And for reasons of operational security, is the phrase that has been used, they cannot tell us when they do that. That makes me nervous. And let me explain to you why. I totally understand the need for operational security. I totally get it that we need to make sure that we hold tight to our vest what the capabilities of this technology is. We don't want enemies of the United States to know what's going on. But the problem is, the reason why we are having restricted airspace around this radar is because it is so powerful that if you are inside of this bubble that they are going to put around it, and they turn on that radar, it could potentially fry your electronics. It could smoke your radios. Actually, this airplane that's here behind me, a Cessna 206, I've got electronic ignition in that airplane. It could fry that electronic ignition. Now, it is not going to hurt me physically because that safe zone is much, much closer, so we're going to be way outside of the safe zone for health reasons. But the safety and volatility of the electronics in the airplane, so we could legitimately be flying in airspace that is cold, meaning it's not active, but for reasons of operational needs, they could turn on that radar in the area that we're in and not have enough time to get the word out to us. So you're legal. They also have a need to go live and go hot with that. And so that could be a problem for us. And so some of you are just now joining. We're talking about the clear long-range discriminating radar, the north end of Windy Pass, and the airspace design that's happening there right now. And the concept and the possibility that that radar could go hot into an area of airspace that is deemed cold, and they not be able to tell us when that happens. So there is, several minutes that it would take for that news to get its way through Anchorage Center, through flight service, to be able to get back to us as pilots. But what I have asked for is that there be a radio frequency that we can monitor that is tied directly to the radar station, where they can notify us when we are flying in that area that they have gone hot, so that we can monitor that frequency and know. Another possibility that I've suggested that has happened in a few places, other parts of the United States, probably the most famous is around Washington, D.C. That laser that flashes, that's safe enough, that's not going to cause a problem for your eyes, but is visible over 20 miles at night, and I think it's 12 to 15 miles during the day, that can notify you when you've penetrated that airspace. I've asked that they explore that technology for us to be able to have a real-time indicator when they have turned on that radar into a segment of the airspace where we have been allowed to operate. And it may sound kind of confusing, and I'm not sure I'm explaining it well here for all of us, but I've asked them to reevaluate that. And so they're going to go back and look, and all the comments that were submitted, they have to go through and review them and find out whether or not it's something that they can do and what happens there. So I will tell you that I am very thankful for the Missile Defense Agency and their willingness to include us in that conversation. They've been very good about reaching out to me and to a few others here in Alaska, Tom George especially, with Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, my counterpart there. They've done a good job. Missile Defense has done a good job of reaching out to us, and so has the FAA, because Missile Defense just can't go do this. They have to get the FAA's, basically their blessing for some of this. What is causing some problems is that this is for reasons of national security, another phrase that gets thrown around an awful lot. And so there is a little bit of a crunch. It's an important thing to do to get this turned on, but they can't cut corners. And they're not wanting to, but they're not wanting to waste any time either. So that's an issue that, while that comment period is already closed, I did submit that letter, and again, you can go read that letter on the Alaska Airmen's website under the Advocacy tab there, and let me know what you think. Not wanting to keep us too much longer tonight, as I was mentioning earlier, there's thunderstorms rolling in. I'm just looking out the window. We still got some time before they hit here in Nenana, then knock out the ability to hear what I'm having to say with the rain hitting the roof of the hangar. But next week, I am going to be participating in a pilot report summit. Pilot reports have been a hot topic in the FAA for a couple of years now. The NTSB has basically told the FAA, look, you've got to do a better job of getting pilot reports and disseminating pilot reports. There's been a few accidents where the NTSB feels like the the pilot had a much better chance of not getting into a situation if he had been told about a pilot report that was in the system. So we all know what pilot reports are important. Hopefully you submit pilot reports, and if you don't, you should. They're not just for weather that's bad. One of the things that the forecasters do is when they forecast bad weather and then you're out flying and you do not encounter that weather, they need to know that too, because that helps them with their forecast models. It also helps the guy behind you who's trying to get through that airspace as well, right? So they know what you're running into, so they can learn from your hardships as you go through that nasty weather. Or if there's no weather at all, then you can tell them that too. So I've been asked, this is a big deal. It would have been held in person in Oklahoma City, but because of all the travel restrictions and the global pandemic, we're all doing this remote now. And so I'm part of a panel during this PIREP Summit to be able to talk about Alaska and the issues that we face here as pilots in Alaska with filing pilot reports, with getting pilot reports, some of the errors that we see. I don't know if you've filed a pilot report and you go back and you look at it later online on the Alaska Aviation Weather Units, one of the places you can do that, also on the weather camera page. But you look at the pilot report that you filed and like, that's not what I said. That's not where I was. There's errors sometimes that pop up with that. So those are some of the issues we're trying to work and fix and do that there. So I'll be representing Alaska next week in that pilot report summit. There's all kinds of human factors, people within the FAA. It's a pretty big deal. Weather forecasters, folks with flight service, folks from flight standards, the airlines, a lot of other folks will be there participating in that event. So that's one of the things I've got going on next week. Some pretty neat weather products are coming out that there's going to be another testing period for some experimental weather products. So be looking at social media for us to announce some of those that you can go and look at. Some of them I'm pretty excited about, some really cool tech that we're starting to integrate now into some aviation tools. Specifically, one of them is using satellites. Satellite technology it's amazing what we can do with satellites now. And taking satellite imagery and data from satellites, they are now able to estimate not just cloud tops, but ceilings. And so they've got some algorithms that they're running to where now they're going to produce a cross-section profile view of a route, telling you what the ceilings are, the cloud types, the cloud heights, and other things as part of all that. And it's an experimental product, and they're looking for some validation. They want us to, as pilots, to look at these things and say, yep, that was spot on, or like, no, you missed it. It was a couple of thousand feet off from what you had predicted there. Right now, the routes are fixed, and there's a limited number of them because they're, again, in a testing phase. The goal is at the end of this project to be able to do a point-and-click personal routes anywhere, and where it will then pull up a profile and tell you what all that information is. So pretty neat stuff. So we're entering into another 90-day test phase here in the next week or so. So look for an announcement on social media about that. So I pretty much covered all the things that I had on my list. There's always more things I can talk about. There's always more things that we're doing for you on behalf of your membership, which I am forever grateful for all of you that have stuck with us and made that commitment to renew your membership year after year, especially in these interesting times that we live in. But your membership is more than just getting discounts at stores and on fuel and other things around the state of Alaska, and actually in the lower 48 in a few places. But your membership is far more valuable than that. I've actually paid for my membership already due to some savings because I bought some things at Alaska Industrial Hardware and was able to use that discount because of an Airman's membership. So I saved already this summer again the cost of my membership. But that's not why I'm a member. I'm a member because I'm obviously passionate about aviation. I'm passionate about being able to continue to aviate. And Alaska is an incredible state, and if it wasn't for aviation, Alaska would not be anything close to what it is today. That's what got me involved with the Airmen's Association. Oh, I'm going to slip up here, but it was close to 14 years ago, I believe. And it was because of some issues that we were having with military airspace, of all things, and wanted to get involved with that. That involvement turned into a membership, turned into serving on the board of directors, served as being president of the board for 4 years, and then continuing on doing government and legislative affairs. I obviously believe in the mission of the Alaska Airmen's Association, or I wouldn't be involved at the level that I am and have been for many, many years. So thank you to all of you who are members. I appreciate you standing with me. It is good when I walk into a government official's office and explain to them what my concerns are, and they know it's not my concerns. They know that while I personally may be concerned, they know that I've got 2,000 other members standing behind me that I am also representing. So I would love to be able to say that I've got 4,000 members standing behind me. That's a big goal, but maybe someday I'll be able to say that. To be able to go in and say that, no, this is a big deal, and there's a lot of other people that feel the same way, so let's figure out a solution to this. I will tell you that dealing with government affairs can be a frustrating and trying time, but I will tell you that the people that I work with and the people that I interface with in the government are normal people. Some of them could be labeled as bureaucrats. Some of them I have had to spend a lot of time educating and informing them as to what the world is like outside of their bureaucracy. But you boil it down, they're good people. And it's always amazing to me, the folks in the FAA that are at headquarters level in Washington, D.C., or even in Oklahoma City, and Seattle, Tacoma area, when they find out about Alaska, they always have questions, they always want to see pictures, and they're always just enthralled with the way that we use aviation up here. And they genuinely feel bad when they realize that their one-size-fits not many people rule and how it impacts us here in Alaska. So because of your membership, that allows me to have that interface with those government officials so we can keep doing what we're doing in Alaska, and my goal is to keep doing it long after I'm gone, that Alaskans will be able to continue flying the way that we do. So that's a long enough pitch for membership. Go to our website. There's all kinds of information there on how to renew your membership or how to join. And if you can't figure it out on your website, feel free to call the office. The phone numbers are listed there, and they'll be able to take care of you there in the office. So thanks again, folks. It's good to catch up with you and good to see a lot of familiar names that are popping up here on Instagram and Facebook. The videos here will be posted on YouTube probably in a day or so you can always go back and watch those after the fact. So send me questions, send them to them via email. My phone number is there on the website as well, and always good to hear from you, see what we can do to help you out. Stay safe, and want to leave you with a word of advice that I continually tell myself, that a very seasoned old-time pilot told me when I first came to Alaska more than 25 years ago to start flying. He says, Adam, it's okay to be a day late. It's not okay to be years too early. Summertime, we've got thunderstorms, we've got smoke, we've got bad weather that comes. It's okay to be a day late or just not go. It's not okay to go out there and push the weather, push some circumstances, and wind up dying years too early. So be careful, make wise choices, and like I've said in other videos, just because we can doesn't mean we should when it comes to some of these health mandates. Be careful out there. Think about what the reputation of general aviation is going to look like because of what you're doing. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Good night.